Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the FantasyPros Football Podcast. I'm your host, Dan Harris. With me is Mike Tagliere. You can find us on Twitter at DanHarris80 and at Mike Tagliere NFL. Tags, it's week 17. How you feeling?
I'm feeling good. I mean, it's so weird getting back into a workout schedule and actually being able to do like a half-hour workout and not feel guilty about it. So I feel good, man. How about you?
Yeah, great, actually. Really great. And I like this as our DFS show, as you know, most people listening at this point know. It's great because it's sort of a way to kind of take the pressure off, you know, whether we're in our own leagues or the accuracy competition or anything like that, and just really dig in. Because this is a tough week. I mean, it's like basically the equivalent of a preseason here where it's more about almost who's going to be playing, who's not going to be playing, as it is who's going to be playing well. You know what I'm saying there? Yep. So thankfully, we have a great guest. It's a top 10 accuracy finisher this year, Jared Smola from Draft Sharks. You can find him on Twitter at Smola DS. Jared, thanks for coming on, man. Congratulations on your top 10 finish.
Yeah, thanks for having me back. Barely top 10, hung on to that 10th spot after being, up near the top for a lot of the season, sort of faded late. Just such a super tough competition. I mean, there are so many awesome rankers that we're all competing against. So, to even come top 10, I'm pretty happy.
Yeah, we were joking a little bit about it before that Tags, you said it, and I think you're right. This was probably the toughest year, at least in recent memory, just given all the COVID stuff, given the practice reports, given everything that was happening on Sunday morning. This is probably the toughest year to, successfully, continuously, adequately, and accurately rank players, don't you think?
No, it definitely was. And so I just want to share a little bit behind the curtain here with Dan. So Dan messaged me yesterday. He said, "Hey, Tags, you finished top 20. You got 19th. And I was like, "Oh, that's cool, man." Because there's like over 150 analysts in this thing now. And it's gotten so big that it's really difficult. But Dan, right after that he sends me, because I sent him back. I was like, "Hey, Dan, where did you finish?" And he said 15th overall. And I started laughing. The only thing he sent back was, "I'm a boss."
None of this is true. Okay, this is just a running joke that Tags and I had, because as most people who listen know, I am technically Tags' boss. I'm the editor-in-chief, so realistically, I could make Tags do the show by himself, solo show, if I really wanted to do it. But Tags always jokes with me that I'm the boss, and so I responded once, be like, "Yeah, I'm the boss," and now Tags has clipped that, and he just sends that around to everybody to be like, "Look at Dan, he thinks he's the man. Look at this." So I really hate Tags, and that's why I'm going to be just tanking all his picks right now on this one. But anyway, it's our DFS show. You know our usual DFS plan. We're going to start with your favorite pricier cash game play at each position. We'll discuss a couple of cash game value plays at each position. We'll do a GPP gamble at each position. Quick discussion of a defense you guys like, and then your stack of the week and your lock of the week. But before we get into it, again, at this point, your season-long leagues should be over. I hope they're over. Don't play into week 17. That is crazy for right now. So hopefully you're going to play DFS this week, and if you are, you should be using our DFS optimizer that you can find over at fantasypros.com/optimizer. Saves you hours of research, lets you tweak your lineup as much as you want, like locking, excluding players to create your own custom player pool, uses projections, constantly being updated, important this week when guys are randomly going to be out. We're going to learn that guys are sitting, all of that. You can import your own custom projections if you want. Supports FanDuel and DraftKings, all of the great stuff, Yahoo and everything like that. Generates up to 150 lineups at a time with our multi-lineup generator. Again, that's fantasypros.com/optimizer. And also remember that we have another day for our contest in December. We're giving away a signed James Robinson helmet. Just leave a review for the show on Apple Podcasts or Stitcher, and then go to fantasypros.com/contest. Again, that ends at midnight on New Year's Eve, so go ahead and get that in now. You'll probably have another, 36 hours to do it by the time you listen to this. All right, guys, let's get into it. This is a tough week, really tough week. So, Jared, who's your favorite pricier cash game play? Let's start with the running back position. Let's go there. Who's your favorite pricier cash game play?
Yeah, and there's going to be a common theme with a lot of my picks here. I'm going all in on the Titans and Vikings offenses this week, facing Houston and Detroit, two bad defenses that just seem like they've given up for the season, on top of being bad. So at running back, I do slightly prefer Derrick Henry to Dalvin Cook as the pay-up guy, and just because Tennessee's still fighting for a playoff spot, so we know they're going to feed Derrick Henry. I guess there's a chance that the Vikings sort of scale back Dalvin Cook a bit. But again, the Texans' horrible run defense. They're 32nd in adjusted points allowed to running backs. Derrick Henry went for 212 yards and 2 touchdowns against Houston back in Week 6. I honestly think he could have a similar game on Sunday.
Yeah, I'm a little worried about what the Vikings are going to do with Cook just because it really doesn't make sense to push him. He's not in contention for the rushing title anymore at this point. So it doesn't, I mean, it makes sense. I'm sure they're going to play him. I'm sure he's going to find the end zone. But as to whether or not they'll keep him in the game when they inevitably win, in my opinion, probably by, 17, 20 points, gets me a little worried. So what do you think, Tags? If you're paying up, is it Derrick Henry?
It's definitely Derrick Henry. I mean, the Titans, they win, they're in, right? And they're going to play this one close to the vest. The Texans have allowed at least one rushing touchdown in 14 of 15 games this year, while allowing 100-plus yards rushing in 12 of 15 games. So it's kind of ridiculous how bad they've been against some pretty bad teams as well. Even last week, you go look at it, the Bengals running backs. Like the Bengals, guys. Those running backs combined for 273 yards and 2 touchdowns. I mean, come on. It's Derrick Henry week, and he's someone that you really can't avoid.
Yeah, so, well, that is the question, right? So he's 9,400 on DraftKings, and on FanDuel, he is 10,200. Is this a week? This is always the million-dollar question. We talk about these are our favorite pricier options if you're going to go that route. Jared, are you going to go that route in cash games? Are you going to pay up for Derrick Henry?
I am. I'm going to be paying up at running back this week. There are quite a few, sub 6K wide receivers I like, even a few sub 4K wide receivers that I think are in play. So to me, and I haven't actually built my cash lineup yet, but it's looking like I'm going to go with some expensive running backs and then go cheaper at wide receiver.
How about you, Tags? Is this a week you're spending up?
I'm definitely spending for Henry. Now, the second running back spot and the flex spot, those are still up in the air. We're going to talk through a lot of those choices today, but Henry's definitely going to be in it.
All right, let's get to wide receiver then. Who's your favorite pricier cash game option of the week, Jared?
Yeah, so again, not sure I'll actually be paying up for this guy, but if you do want to take, a stud wide receiver, I like Justin Jefferson. Again, going to that Vikings offense against Detroit. Jefferson obviously has had a great rookie season. I think he should be in contention for rookie of the year, although I'd probably give it to Herbert. But Jefferson's been especially good over the last 5 games now. 6.8 catches, 84 yards, 0.6 touchdowns per game over that span. And he's sort of taken over as the clear number 1 in Minnesota. 10.8 targets per game over the last 5 compared to just 6.8 for Adam Thielen. So, I mean, both those guys could have big games on Sunday. The Lions have actually allowed 5 wide receivers to top 19 DraftKings points over their last 3 games now. So we could see Jefferson and Thielen have big ones, but among the two, I prefer Jefferson.
Yeah, Jefferson, he's close to breaking Randy Moss's record, right? For rookie receiving yards, I think. Am I making that up? I feel like I read that. But I think he's there. But yeah, I'm looking at it now. It looks like he needs just 47 yards. My worry would be with all these guys, like Mike Evans, if we're going to talk about him, he needs Tags 40 yards to get to 1,000 yards?
Yeah, I think that they're going to play those guys for a quarter and then rest the Buck starters.
Right. I don't think they'd do that with Jefferson. I agree. Jefferson's a great play. I think you can pick on the Vikings pretty much everybody but Cook. The one worry would be like if he gets that record and then they'd be like, okay, good, you're in there, but we'll see. So what do you think about Jefferson this week, Tags? And if it's not him, who's the guy you're paying up for?
He was definitely one of the 2 guys that I was going to mention. Jefferson, love him. I mean, he's been targeted at least 10 times in 5 of his last 7 games. So, Jared was talking about the last 5 games. It even goes beyond that. I mean, he's been the number 1 wide receiver. If you remove touchdowns from the equation, it's not even a question, especially since week 3 where Jefferson became like a full-time player. This game is being played in a dome, which is great for route runners, which is what Justin Jefferson is. It's also great for weather conditions because we don't have to worry about snow. We don't have to worry about wind. We don't have to worry about nothing. We don't have to worry about anything. Here in Chicago, last night, legit, I was out there shoveling and it's ridiculous. Now it's ice this morning. 31-point team implied total, which is fantastic. We're going to talk about this game later on, so I don't want to get too far into that. But the other one I would consider is A.J. Brown. And, it's going back to the whole idea, this Houston Texans secondary, the defense as a whole is terrible. I mean, did you guys see J.J. Watt's rant?
Yes.
That was it was fantastic, right? Yeah. And it's true. And I mean, while J.J. Watt himself is not the player he used to be, he's not making the impact that he used to. He's still out there trying to give it 100%, but they basically don't have the talent on this defense to make it work. They just don't, right? And you look at it, and ever since they lost Bradley Roby, this team has been trending down and down and down and down. They've allowed at least 1 wide receiver to hit 21.5 PPR points in each of their last 4 games. And 9 of 15 games in the season, but each of those last 4 games are without Bradley Roby, so that's very important. Going back to their matchup back in week, I think 11 it was, Brown only saw 7 targets, but he turned those 7 targets into 5 catches for 56 yards and 2 touchdowns. Yeah, AJ Brown at 7,200. If you want to play him, I have zero problems with that.
Yeah, Jared, let me get your thoughts on that because, again, the Titans are a very difficult team to analyze ever just because you can think about game script. I mean, Deshaun Watson's pretty banged up as well. I don't really expect the Texans, with their defense, as Tag said, to be able to put up a real fight here against a very clearly motivated Titans team. If Derrick Henry runs wild, we've seen it before. We've seen everybody sort of do it. But do you worry at all, if you're going to pay up for Brown, about the fact that this could legitimately just be, I'm just giving Derrick Henry the ball 35 times and they're going to win by 20 points, and Tannehill's almost going to attempt sub 20 pass attempts?
Yeah, I mean, I worry a little. Like, Brown's not someone I play a lot, at least in cash, just because I'm looking for targets, and he's just so efficient. I mean, he doesn't get huge target volume, but he was so efficient last year. He's backed it up again this season. I'm fine with the play. I don't think Houston is going to stop Tennessee's running game or passing game. We've seen, I think, as you alluded to there, Dan, Tannehill and Henry go off in the same game. So I think that's going to be what we see on Sunday.
Well, the one thing we know we're going to see on Sunday is AJ Brown limp off the field at some point, and us think that he's done for the day, and then come back and break 6 tackles and probably, go for a 45-yard gain. All right, let's go to quarterbacks here, Jared. And again, one thing I'll point out, by the way, before we move on, I guess, from wide receiver, is that you look at the top-priced wide receivers, and you've got Devontae Adams at top, you've got Calvin Ridley, but then it's Tyreek Hill, probably not going to play. Stephon Diggs, probably not going to play, or, maybe he'll play. We don't know necessarily, but certainly some question marks. DeAndre Hopkins goes up against the Rams. It's not, there are a lot of the top options are guys that you're not even considering playing. So certainly I've got no problem with Jefferson, and Tags knows I will always play AJ Brown in any format, under any circumstances, no matter what it is. Let's go to quarterback here. Jared, who do you like as your favorite pricier cash game play?
Yeah, I'm going Ryan Tannehill here, $7,000 on DraftKings. I mean, Houston just gave up 371 yards and 2 touchdowns to Brandon Allen. Tannehill went for 33.5 DraftKings points against them in the first meeting. And again, I think you can play Tannehill with Henry in cash games. I think you're like almost guaranteed 4 touchdowns out of those 2 guys combined, and you could get 6 touchdowns out of them combined.
Yeah, he's 7,000 on DraftKings. That's a fine price. Tags, what do you think? Tannehill in this one or someone else?
I like Tannehill more as a leverage play in tournaments than I do in cash, just because this very well could be one of those games where, and again, it's not impossible for Henry and Tannehill to go off, but it's more like projecting this and saying, what if Derrick Henry is just smashing and he goes for 200 plus yards and 4 touchdowns? That's going to leave you with Tannehill at let's call it 225 yards and a touchdown or 2. I don't think that's enough to get there with the quarterback position in today's fantasy landscape. That's the issue that you run into. I do like Tannehill in tournaments because, again, you could have the idea that Derrick Henry is rushing for 150 plus yards, but only scores 1 touchdown, and then Tannehill throws for 303 or 4 touchdowns. That's entirely possible. So it's more of a tournament play for me with Tannehill, especially considering they priced him at $7K. If he was around like 6 to 65, I think that I'd consider him more in cash. And I don't think he's a terrible play by any means, but it's just more of worrying about the game script there.
So who is your guy then, Tags, for cash games?
I'm not going to pay up at quarterback, but if I did, it'd probably be Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson last year in 2 games against Cincinnati, it's the same defensive scheme that they're running. They have a lot of injuries up in the front, on their front 4. So, he ran for 152 yards and a touchdown against them last year. He ran for 65 yards and a touchdown against them last year. The first time they played this year was when Lamar Jackson was going through a funk. He wasn't completing very many of his passes. He was actually dinged up, and he only had 2 rushing attempts in that game. It was like a career low for him. So I do fully expect him to come back. He's playing with all the confidence in the world right now, trying to keep that momentum going. If I were to pay up, it'd be Lamar Jackson. He just gives you that rock solid floor, and then you obviously have a ceiling of 30, 35 points.
But again, you aren't paying up, right? At quarterback
I don't think I am. I was going to talk through it with you guys in the show, obviously, but if I were going to, I'd go to him. But I don't think I can if I want to pay up for Derrick Henry, and I could probably get a piece of Lamar Jackson at tight end, which was where we're about to go to.
All right, so first, before we go, Jared, let me ask, Lamar Jackson on DraftKings, 8,000. What, just generally speaking, do you think about him at that price?
Yeah, but I think he's fine. He's not going to let you down at that price. I'm with Tags, though. I'm not going to be paying up at quarterback either. I just, threw Tannehill out there. We'll see if, we're all on the same cheaper quarterback play here. Yeah,
my usual caveat is that we talk about our favorite pricier cash game play, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we are going to play the pricier cash game play. And again, on FanDuel, Tannehill is the 5th most expensive quarterback. So they're making you pay, and you can do that, as Tags and I talk about all the time. You can do that much more easily on FanDuel for sure. But at his price at 8,200 and at Lamar Jackson 9,000, even on FanDuel, I agree it's not a week that I'm going to be paying up for quarterback in cash games. But let's go to tight ends here, as Tags alluded to. Jared, who is your favorite price here cash game play at the tight end position?
Yeah, George Kittle for me, $6,000, and he was limited in his return last week. He only played half of San Francisco's offensive snaps. He ran a route on 62% of the pass plays. Still caught 4 balls for 92 yards. I think there's a chance he plays more this week in his second game back. Even if he doesn't, though, I think he's sort of discounted to take into account the fact that he might be limited. Like Kittle opened the season at $7,200, and we're getting him this week at $6,000. So I think it's a good price.
Tags, thoughts on Kittle as a cash game play?
I know what's funny is like when I first started going through my list, I put Kittle there, and then I went back and I looked at the snap counts, and I was like, I don't know if I could do him in cash because he did come back last week, but he only played, it was 28 of 56 snaps, so he was basically on the field for half the time. Should we expect that to move forward, and did he look good? Yeah, I do, and that's why, again, I had him there initially, and then it was like, oh, in cash, do I want to play a guy that's half? But with Brandon Ayuk out, Deebo Samuel still not playing, like, I have no issues with Kittle. It's just my what drove me to put him in the tournament conversation was Mark Andrews at 5,800, because like Mark Andrews, the last 3 times he's played against his Bengals defense, and again, that included a game where Lamar Jackson was not playing extremely well, but his last 3 games, 6 catches for 53 yards, 2 touchdowns, 6 catches for 99 yards, and then 6 catches for 56 yards and a touchdown. The Bengals have allowed the 4th most DraftKings points to tight ends this year. It's because their linebackers are just not very good. The safeties are fine, but Mark Andrews is probably someone that I might go to just because he feels a little bit safer than Kittle. But I don't disagree with Jared on this one. I like Kittle.
Yeah, Jared, how do you feel about Andrews? I mean, he's $200 cheaper than Kittle. Is it a big difference between the two in your mind?
No, I mean Mike's right. Andrews probably a bit safer, if anything. I still think Kittle might have the higher ceiling, but caveat again, I'm not paying up for either of those guys in cash games.
Right. Yeah. No, that's and Tags. Is that what you're planning to do? Are you planning to pay up for tight end?
I don't know. There's a couple cheaper options at tight end that are very, very enticing for me. Okay. So I'm still in lineup construction mode because this week has been slower than most, where it's kind of like, and then we're recording this on a Wednesday, where typically we do it on Thursday and I have another day. But so I have not nowhere near saying like what my cash game lineup's going to be, but it's more like just talking through these options with you guys because, again, it's always good to talk and get some different points of views.
No, absolutely. All right, before we get on to our cash game value plays, let me ask Tags, what did you have for breakfast this morning?
I had a bagel with cream cheese, a cinnamon raisin one.
Nice. I like cinnamon raisin. Jared, what about you?
I had some yogurt with some granola mixed in there. Delicious.
Too healthy. But it's fine. Do you guys know what I had? Nothing.
Dan
no, nothing. Stop guessing. Nothing. The answer is nothing. I tried. Okay, my kids are on vacation from school. That's like family breakfast time, right? Usually they're out the door at 7, so dad's not quite ready to get up and have breakfast with the family yet. But on vacation time, it's like family breakfast. That means for all of us, it's Magic Spoon cereal. Cocoa for my daughter, of course. Fruity for my son. A mix of blueberry and frosted for me. We got ready to eat. We poured our bowls, all ready to go. And we were out of milk. So no breakfast for me, multiple insults from the kids who blame me for the lack of milk. I don't know, whatever. But as soon as we're done here, I'm going out to the grocery store to get some milk. Tags, actually, you and I have another podcast after this. So after this, Tags, you and I are going to do another podcast. Then I'm going to go to the dump to take my trash, haul our trash. That's what we do here in New Hampshire. Then I'm going out to the grocery store to get milk because I need Magic Spoon cereal. It's going to be my lunch today. I do not care. It tastes great. It's healthy. No sugar, 11 grams of protein, only 3 net grams of carbs in each serving, GMO-free, gluten-free, soy-free, keto-friendly. You don't need to take my word for it. It's 100% guaranteed. If you don't like it for any reason, which you will, but if you didn't, they're going to refund your money. Go to magicspoon.com/fantasypros, grab a variety pack, use our code FantasyPros to get free shipping. That's magicspoon.com/fantasypros. Use the code FantasyPros for free shipping. All right, let's get to our cash game.
Wait a second, Dan.
What?
Did you just say in New Hampshire you have to haul your trash somewhere?
So it's not everywhere. I don't think the entire state of New Hampshire. I don't want to besmirch the great small state of New Hampshire in which I reside. In my town, Tags, the dump, which I affectionately call it, it's also called the transfer station. We haul our trash to dump. Now, you can pay a private company to do it, but whatever, man. I can do it. I load up my car every single week. Tons. It's mostly recycling, but I haul it out to the dump. I dump it, and then I come back. How about that?
I didn't know that was actually a thing. I don't know if I'm ignorant to this or what, but I did not know that was an actual thing.
Did you know this was a thing, that some people do this?
Never heard of that. How's the smell situation in your car?
It's bad. It's not pretty. It's not good. But I tell you what, all right, that's how I keep my car sort of my own. It's because whenever we've got to go on a family trip, it's like the kids are like, no, we got to take mom's car. Dad's car, it smells like trash, which is fine. I'm like used to it at this point. But for me, that means I keep it, there. But yes, it is I appreciate you saying that. It is. I've developed a system, though, to keep it fresh. But still, that's right, Tags. And actually, full disclosure, it's like my favorite thing to do because it's like 15 minutes where I'm by myself. Right? Like I can listen to our podcast. It's like the only 15 minutes, Tags. You've watched all our live streams, all our videos.
Oh, yes.
Those kids, those kids, it's all dad.
Gotta love them.
Will is climbing on me all day. Sophie's all over the place. No, that's my 15 minutes apiece. I love it. I can listen to our podcast. I can laugh. I can cry, all the good stuff. Anyway, everybody, if you want to hear more about me taking my trash to the dump or transfer station, just hit me up on Twitter. In the meantime, let's get to cash game value plays. Let's start with the running back position. Jared, kick us off. What do you got?
I'm going to start with DeAndre Swift, who, isn't super cheap, but he actually comes in as the top running back value on the slate based on our projections and his price at $6,300. 25 carries and 10 targets over the last 2 games. Now, he's actually seen exactly 5 targets in 5 straight games. And that's, sort of what you're paying for here with the full PPR if you're on DraftKings. Swift gets this matchup against Minnesota. We just saw what Alvin Kamara did against Minnesota on Friday there. Mike Zimmer, after that game, I don't know if you guys caught this, he said, quote, "This is a bad defense, worst one I've ever had." So he knows they have no chance. So I think Swift sort of finishes his rookie season with a nice game.
Does it matter to you whether or not Stafford starts, or you're just good with him regardless?
Yeah, I'm good with him regardless. Again, I think you're paying for the passing game volume.
Tags, thoughts on Swift at 6,300?
I definitely dig Swift. I really wish they would just unleash him and just forget about Adrian Peterson forever. Yeah, that's the part that sucks, but I am 100% with you here. It's just because this is going to be a negative game script. We know that. Mm-hmm. We know that they've allowed 8 rushing touchdowns over the last 2 weeks to running backs. I mean, Alvin Kamara accounted for 6 of them, but still David Montgomery 146 yards and 2 touchdowns before. And if Eric Kendricks remains out, which it seems 100% likely, right? This defense has just been terrible against the run. So I do like Swift. It just sucks that he looks so good too when they give him the ball. And it's just wondering, why are you guys continually giving Adrian Peterson snaps? I don't get it.
I mean, you can hope that given that it's the actual last game of the season, maybe this will be the time they'll be like, okay, we're just going to turn you loose. But I agree, even if they don't, he makes a fine play. How about you, Tags? Who's a cash game value play for you at running back?
Melvin Gordon. I like him at 5,700. Now that we know that Phillip Lindsay's on IR, he's not going to play. The Raiders have allowed at least one running back to score 17.5 or more PPR points in 5 of their last 6 games, including 2 30-point performances. Gordon did get 16 of the 21 carries for this team last week. The game total is over 50 points in this one. I do actually expect a lot of scoring out of this game. So Melvin Gordon getting a 5,700 as a workhorse running back, I kind of like him there.
I do wonder about this one, Tags, because I've been thinking about this game and mostly in terms of Locke and Jeudy. Jeudy got 15 targets last week? Yeah. Do you think there's any part of it that's just, Drew Lock has to know at this point, right, that the Broncos are evaluating him and probably not in a favorable way. And my worry is that it's just going to be so much of a passing game that Gordon might be, not get quite the workload that we would expect. You know what I mean? I could see, given the fact, it almost felt like he's been told, target Jerry Jeudy, go after him. It didn't exactly work out, of course, but sort of, throw as much as you can, and he wants to prove himself. Does that worry you whatsoever in this Week 17 game where it's sort of weirdness, not classic game script?
Even if it's a pass-heavy game script, it's not like, Vic Fangio is going to allow it to go an 80-20 split or anything like that. I mean, it could be a bit lean more on the passing game, and honestly, they should against the Las Vegas Raiders because the Raiders don't have a pass rush. Their secondary has been pretty atrocious. Their wide receivers should be able to find some room in the secondary, but we should still see a minimum of 15 touches for Melvin Gordon at 5,700 against a bad run defense.
All right. What do you think of Melvin Gordon, Jared?
I'm going to force myself to go back to Melvin Gordon, 'cause I played him everywhere last week.
Yeah,
Man, he ran well.
Yep.
Lock vultured the goal line touchdown. And strangely, Gordon didn't see a single target in that game. He had seen 7 targets over the previous 2. So I sort of think that's just a one-off fluke. I think the Raiders' run defense is one we've been attacking all season. So I definitely like the Gordon play.
Yeah, I might just be a little burned from last week for sure. All right, Jared, do you have any other running back cash game value plays?
Yeah, I think we got to talk about Malcolm Brown, $4,300. I mean, he's literally the only guy left in LA now. I mean, it's, I don't expect him to be super efficient. It's not a great matchup. The Rams are going to be throwing out John Wolford at quarterback, so it might be an ugly game. But I think you have a chance to get 20 touches out of a running back for $4,300. I definitely think he's worth considering for cash.
Yeah, Brown is so interesting because it's really hard to ignore him in cash in particular, but man, that offense is going to be so ugly this week given what they're looking at. Tags, what do you think about Brown?
Well, so I actually read something earlier today that was saying that it's still possible that Cam Akers plays in this game. So I don't, being it's kind of like a must win for the Rams. They're a team that needs to win too, obviously.
Yeah.
So they're going to do everything they can to get him back on the field. And so we should definitely mention that it hinges on that. But yes, Malcolm Brown, I mean, the best way to describe it, it's not a great matchup, but the Cardinals have still allowed 23.6 PPR points per game to running backs. Okay, that's a fine number. It's near the middle of the pack in the league. But when the reason that it's usually like, you start to lose interest is because you start dividing it between the running backs and you look at it. But it's like James Robinson this year, right? He played on a crappy offense, didn't have many scoring opportunities, but the fact that he was a guy that was locked into 18 touches every single week presented value. And in a Rams offense that typically the starting running back almost always has value as long as he's healthy and not Todd Gurley, when his knees are falling off. He has value at 4,300. Again, if Cam Akers is out, I don't know how you pass on Malcolm Brown at 4,300 because he allows you to do some things in your lineup, like fit Derrick Henry, like pay up for Mark Andrews or George Kittle, like pay up for one of the wide receivers you want to.
Right. All right, Tex, did you have another name other than Malcolm Brown as a cash game value play?
So this one's going to sound absolutely disgusting, but I'm going to say it just because I feel like it would be wrong if I didn't. LaMichael Perine?
Yes, that is the correct answer. Sorry, I was like, this better be LaMichael Perine because otherwise I was going to throw him out, and I hate throwing out Jets. Go ahead, Ted.
Yeah, you should. The Patriots' run defense has just been atrocious as of late, and there's really no other way to explain it. Frank Gore's already been ruled out for this game, so LaMichael Perine, this is a team that's got to figure out a lot of things. Like, obviously, Sam Darnold's the biggest question mark and whether or not they're going to retain him, but, Frank Gore's going to move on with Adam Gase. He's going to go wherever Adam Gase goes. Hopefully not in the NFL. But
New England, baby. I mean, Bill Belichick. You hear him wax poetic.
Oh,
Unless they're just trying to convince the Jets to hold on to him, maybe. But yes,
naturally.
Go ahead. Sorry.
But Perine is someone that they drafted this year. They have to kind of find out what they have. They've never really seen him in a big workhorse role. Whether it was Le'Veon Bell or Frank Gore, those guys were always in the lineup. So now with Gore out, I think they're going to see what they got in Perine, and I would imagine that he's going to get 15 touches in this game against, a Patriots team that's been allowing tons of production to running backs.
Yeah, don't forget, it did look like they were actually going to follow through on their word where they were going to say, let's see what we have in Perine before he got hurt, right? I mean, it did look like he was actually going to get the vast majority of the workload. Even last week, he still got 10 touches with Gore. I do expect them to say, okay, let's actually see what's there this week. And at 4,100 on DraftKings, that to me seemed like a great cash game play. Jared, go ahead, talk some sense into us.
I don't know if I want to do a Jet in cash. And I guess I'm not totally convinced they won't, continue to mix in Ty Johnson and even bring Josh Adams back in the fold. I think the other cheap guy we can consider is Dare Ogunbowale at 4,500. He saw 14 carries and 5 targets last week. He was sort of the Jags' clear lead back with James Robinson out. But I mean, playing Jags and Jets in cash probably isn't the way to go.
Yeah, that's true. It's going to be an ugly day. The one thing I'll mention before we go on to wide receivers is that on FanDuel, I kind of like Myles Gaskin, who's $100 cheaper than Melvin Gordon, especially with, we don't know what the Bills are going to do. What do you guys expect the Bills to do? Do you think they're going to rest? And even when people rest starters, it's not as if they usually rest their entire defense or anything like that. But out of curiosity, we don't know right now. Sean McDermott has not come out and said what they're going to do. Do you guys expect the Bills to rest the vast majority of their starters?
I do.
You do?
Yeah, I do too. They did it They did it week 17 last year. I think they'll do the same thing, especially
And
after
so
the Steelers are sitting.
Yeah, we had all the question marks about what was it going to look like last week with Gaskin and Ahmed, and those questions were answered based on Gaskin's performance. I think you can expect similar here. I think you're going to see a heavy volume against the Bills and largely backup. So at $100 cheaper on FanDuel than Melvin Gordon, he's a guy who I'm kind of eyeing as well. Let's go to wide receiver. Who's a cash game value play for you, Jared?
I like T.Y. Hilton at $5,800 on DraftKings. He had that 3-game hot stretch a few weeks ago. He's cooled off a bit over the past 2 weeks, but still 4 catches, 71 yards, 3 catches, 60 yards over his last 2 games, 13 targets in those 2 games. He's averaging a little over 7 targets per game over his last 5. That's a nice number for the price tag. And then you get the matchup against the Jags, who are just all sorts of banged up in the secondary. Jacksonville has allowed a wide receiver to reach 20 DraftKings points in 7 of their last 8 games now. We get T.Y. Hilton at home. Colts implied for almost 32 points, the second highest implied total on the slate. So I like T.Y.
This is really, just from an NFL standpoint, a really fascinating week because every team that needs the win in week 17 is going to get that win, right? I mean, you have stuff, but you've got the Titans, you've got the Colts, you've got the Browns, you've got the Dolphins, you've got the Ravens. They all need to win, and they're probably all going to win is my expectation. Tags, what do you think about Hilton here against the Jags at 5,800 on DraftKings?
He was the guy I had down too. I mean, he was just talking about 20 DraftKings points. You'd actually have to go all the way back to week 3 to find the last time the Jaguars did not allow at least one wide receiver to score 14.5 or more PPR points against them. That's ridiculous, dude.
Yeah.
Like that basically tells you somebody on the Colts is going to score 15 PPR points. And I think all the signs that we've seen over the last, month is that T.Y. Hilton and Phillip Rivers' chemistry has kind of built over time. And T.Y. Hilton at 5,800, if he scores 15 PPR points, you're hitting almost 3x. So he's definitely the value play in cash games.
All right, other than Hilton, Tags, who are you looking at here?
There's a couple guys. I think Jamison Crowder at 5K can be considered. I know Cole Beasley didn't do much, obviously, on Monday night, but dealing with an injury, whatever. Stephon Diggs stealing all the production. But Jamison Crowder with Sam Darnold. Darnold seems to be favoring him again, and the Patriots have struggled a little bit with slot receivers over time. Russell Gage at 5,100 if Julio Jones is out. And I don't know why the hell he would be playing. I know he got the injection and all that, and he wanted to come back, but it seems unlikely that he's going to play at this point. So Russell Gage at 5,100 is someone I'd consider as well.
Man, Tags, you're going to have so many Jets in your cash game lineups. It's going to be absolutely amazing between Crowder and Perine. How about you, Jared? All right, Jared, let's talk about this. First of all, it's Crowder. It's a Jet, so we know how you feel. Avoid all Jets, right, in cash game lineups?
I'd play Crowder over Perine. I definitely would not want 2 Jets in there, so I'd go Crowder. I'm fine with that.
And what about Russell Gage, assuming that Julio Jones is out?
Yeah, he's fine. I like Marvin Jones. I like him with or without Matt. I'm just a big Marvin Jones fan. I've been playing him a lot this season. I played him on the Saturday slate last week. He obviously disappointed, but
yeah.
I mean, he's been good without Kenny Galladay. 9 targets, 6 catches, 73 yards per game over the previous 7 without Kenny Galladay. Before last week. I don't know, $5,100. It just seems too cheap to me.
Tags, what do you think if it's Daniel?
That's the thing. I wanted to like Marvin Jones. He was someone that was popping up that I'm like, oh, I want to play him. But then I'm like, if it's Chase Daniel, I don't want to attach myself to that. Like, right. Chase Daniel can't do anything. I don't know how this man has gotten paid over the course of his career as much money as he has, but kudos to him, though. Seriously. I don't think there's any upside there with so it's like if you play Marvin Jones, what you're hoping for is like 60 yards and a touchdown. That's with Chase Daniel. And I think that's almost like his upside with Chase Daniel at quarterback because we saw clear incompetence there. So in Stafford, I can't imagine he's going to play in this game.
Now, Tags, if he does play, though, like we're assuming he's not going to play. I think that's the correct assumption. But if he did play, would you be okay with Jones in that situation?
If he was playing, I mean, I want to say yes, but I'd also expect Matthew Stafford to get knocked out of the game early on.
Yeah.
So that's another problem. And in cash games, I just don't feel like I want to trust that.
All right. So, Jared, anybody we haven't talked about yet at wide receiver as a cash game value play, or do you want to move to quarterback?
Yeah, I'm ready to move to quarterback.
I'm good with it. Let's go to quarterback, cash game value play. Go ahead. Start us off.
Yeah, so Kirk Cousins is the guy I'm going to be playing in cash. $6,300. He's had a good fantasy season, especially lately. He has 3 passing scores now in 5 of his last 8 games. He's averaging 278 yards and 2.5 touchdowns per game over those last 8. It's been 23.1 DraftKings points per game over that span. And again, I just want to attack that Lions defense.
Yeah, this also is the guy that stuck out to me both, on DraftKings, but also on FanDuel, even at 7,700, because again, I do expect this to be something where there's no reason for them to go crazy with Dalvin Cook in this game. There's no reason for them to push him, and we saw last week you can do anything you want against this Lions defense. So I do expect a lot of throwing. I do expect Kirk Cousins to have a very big game here. Tags, what do you think about Cousins as a cash game value play?
No, Cousins is someone I was definitely going to bring up, and that's why I said I wanted to talk this through with you guys, because I don't know how to feel in terms of if I should trust him in cash or not, because he's 6,300. You really hope if you have a non-mobile quarterback, you're really hoping that you get him at 6K or less. It's only 300, but it's still something. But like when you look at the other guys like a Derek Carr, like a Matt Ryan, those guys are in that $5,700, $5,900 range. Cousins, I do think they take it easy on Cook in this game, but the concern I have with Cousins, this all comes back to, and the reason I'm also been going back and forth in the stack that I wanted to talk about at the end of the show, was the lack of competition on the other side of the ball. Because Kirk Cousins, again, he has no rushing upside. Zero. Nil. Nothing, right? So if he's a guy, even if he has a great game, let's say like a perfect passer rating, but he only throws for 250 yards and 2 touchdowns, that's not really going to get you there. And I think that's possible when you consider the lack of competition on the other side of the ball. The reason that I kind of want to like Cousins, though, more and kind of try and find a stack in this game is because they have that 31-point team implied total. And if I'm expecting them to kind of limit their exposure to Dalvin Cook, and rightfully so, like you have this man under contract for another, 3 years now? Yep. And you used and abused him all year long. 30 carries in multiple games. It's kind of ridiculous. You need to rest that guy. There's no reason to play him and give him 25 touches in this game. So I do like Cousins, and it's one of those guys that I was teetering on. But, what do you guys feel about someone like Derek Carr at 5,700? I also think if you're really, really trying to save some money, Drew Lock at 5K doesn't make. I don't think it's a bad play. And I'm gonna preface this by saying, when you look at quarterbacks, how they perform under pressure and how they perform from a clean pocket, Drew Lock has like an 80-point differential. It's the biggest in the NFL. He is terrible, absolutely terrible under pressure. Like you get a 39.6 quarterback rating if you throw the ball into the ground. I think his quarterback rating under pressure this year is like 22. Right. So it's bad. But going back to this, the idea is that this could be his final chance to prove himself to this Broncos organization going into next year, where I would expect them to look at a quarterback. And then you say, all right, this Raiders pass defense, they do not get to the passer. They don't at all. They've dealt with some injuries in the secondary. They fired their defensive coordinator. There's a lot of question marks back there. So Drew Lock at 5K kind of makes sense. And he's actually been flashing some mobility lately, like running. And I think that's more of like, I don't want to turn the ball over. I'm just going to run the ball. You can do that against Oakland too, or against Las Vegas. So what do you guys think about Drew Lock and Derek Carr?
So I'm going to turn it over to you, Jared, to ask. I will say that Drew Lock was certainly on my list, and I'm very intrigued by him this week for really the reasons, Tags, also that we talked about. In addition to the fact that the defense is going up, I think that he knows, to the extent he has any sort of chance, really, for his future, he needs to close the season strong. He needs to try to have as big a game as he can. So I think there's going to be a lot of volume from him in this one. For me, again, I look at FanDuel a little more. His price isn't so cheap that I would be willing to go for it in cash. He's more of a tournament play for me because, again, his price is not cheap enough that I think a ton of people are going to be on him. I could be wrong, but for me, it seems like he's not going to be overly owned in tournament plays and GPPs. So it is something where I'm looking for him more in that. So now I'll turn it over to you, Jared. What do you think both of Carr and Drew Lock?
Yeah, so I have Lock as the 4th best quarterback value on DraftKings, and that's not with crazy projections for him this week.
Right.
It's just a pure price play. So if you do want to, try to jam in a lot of high-priced running backs and a high-priced wide receiver or two, we haven't even talked about Devontae Adams, but he is obviously a strong play. So I think there's a case to be made for Drew Lock in cash. I think Matt Ryan and Derek Carr are fine. I have them as the 5th and 6th best values at quarterback. But again, I just prefer Kirk Cousins. I think the Vikings score 4+ touchdowns in this game on Sunday, and I'll take my chances that Cousins gets 2 or 3 of them.
Yeah, I mean that is the risk, and Tags, you made it clear, but could be one of these things where they rest Dalvin Cook and Mike Boone winds up getting 3 touchdowns or something like that, just to twist the knife a little bit. Let's go to tight ends here, guys. Cash game value plays. Who do you have, Jared?
Going back to the Vikings here with Irv Smith at $3,900. Over the last 3 weeks without Kyle Rudolph, and Rudolph was placed on IR today, so he's definitely out for Week 17.
Yep.
Over the last 3 weeks without him, Irv Smith has averaged 5.7 targets, 4.3 catches, 51 yards, has 3 total touchdowns over that span. Should have a 4th touchdown, but he dropped an easy one. He's basically been a full-time player over the past couple weeks after getting over that injury he had. The Lions have not been good against tight ends, like they have not been good against pretty much any position this season. In the first meeting between these teams, Irv Smith and Kyle Rudolph combined for 5 catches, 50 yards, and 2 touchdowns.
Yeah. What do you think, Tags, about Irv Smith as a cash game value play?
Yeah, I like Irv Smith. He's a solid play. I mean, it was disappointing coming into last week that he had not seen more than 5 targets in a game all season, and then all of a sudden he sees 9 targets against the Saints, a team that had been really good against tight ends. So to see him, rack up 53 yards and 2 touchdowns, that's fantastic.
Yep.
He's one of 3 tight ends that I wanted to mention in this segment because I think it's narrowing it down to see which one you want to play, figuring out game script and all that stuff. Mike Gesicki at 4,200. I like him a bit. He played a full complement of snaps last week. His last 4 games with Tua have netted 54 yards and or a touchdown in each of them. And you'd have to go back to week 10 to find the last time that he scored fewer than 8.3 PPR points. The Bills have allowed 9 of 14 tight ends to finish top 14 against them. So this is basically a floor play for Gesicki. We've seen a ceiling out of him, but it's basically just looking at it and saying the Bills, Tre'Davious White taking away Devontae Parker if he plays. Obviously, they have limited passing options. Tua, the last time he was benched, he came back and played pretty well. So I think Gesicki at 4,200 makes some sense. Irv Smith's one, and then Evan Engram at 3,700 is a guy that just sees way too many targets for him to be priced at 3,700.
What do you think about Engram there, Jared?
Yep, I've played him a bunch this season. It's been frustrating more often than not, but I think Mike's right. That the process is right if you're getting that many targets for that price.
All right, let's go to GPPs. Let's start with the GPP play at running back. Jared, start us off.
I'm going to go Josh Jacobs here, and I do sort of agree that Vegas-Denver game could end up pretty high scoring. Really with Jacobs, it's been you want to play him when the Raiders win. And Vegas is currently favored by 2.5 points in this game. I would bet on them winning. I could see it going either way, but I would bet on the Raiders. In wins this season, Josh Jacobs is averaging 23.5 carries for 94 yards and 1.3 touchdowns per game. Denver has really been gashed on the ground over the past 5 weeks. They've allowed 5.3 yards per carry to running backs. So, if you get one of those, 20-plus carry games from Jacobs, I think he could have a big one.
Tags, what do you think of Jacobs as a GPP play?
He's tournament only, yeah, for sure. He's someone that's comparable. I think you have to start comparing him to someone like David Montgomery. I think that they're similar players in terms of what they bring. Maybe from an efficiency standpoint, yeah. Montgomery's a little bit more involved in the passing game. But I think Jacobs has more opportunities around the goal line because his offense has generally been better. But that's how I kind of view him. And so I'd put him in the tournament range. I just hate how the reason I don't play him in cash very much is because he doesn't really have much of a floor because he's not involved in the passing game. So I like him. I like DeAndre Swift. We already talked about him a bit. I like him in tournaments a lot. But Nyheim Hines at 4,900 is a leverage play off of Jonathan Taylor. Because Taylor, I think this week is more of I think he's like the mini Derrick Henry. He's a guy that you expect to absolutely crush, but
right.
You know that he's involved in a little bit more of a timeshare with Nyheim Hines. You know that they could kind of go through the air against the Jaguars. But I mean, Nyheim Hines, there's been 3 games this year where he's surpassed 20 PPR points. And would it shock anyone if he kind of just popped back up on the radar at 4,900? That's really cheap because he gives you a decent floor. I mean, he's scoring, 11, 12 PPR points as a floor in almost all of his games. And then you got these to get the ceiling if for whatever reason he gets the goal line carries instead of Jonathan Taylor, or if Taylor were to be pulled from the game early just because the Colts are way out in front and they're just going to basically kind of coast along for the remainder of the game. So I don't think Nyheim Hines is a bad tournament play.
What do you think about that one, Jared?
Yeah, I like it. I mean, I just like the Colts in general. I think, the Vikings and Titans are sort of the 2 offenses I'm most in on, but the Colts are third, and I will probably try to get at least one Colt in all my lineups this week.
Okay, let's get to wide receiver. Who's a GPP gamble at the position for you, Jared?
Mike Williams for me, $5,000. I had him in a ton of tournament lineups last week. He was frustrating him. He got 10 targets. That's all you could ask for. He just missed scoring a touchdown. It was a tough catch, but one you sort of want him to make. So he ended up with just 4 catches for 54 yards. But again, for the price tag, $5,000, I'm not expecting Keenan Allen to play. I don't see why they'd throw him out there with the bum hamstring. And the Chiefs are going to be resting some starters. I'm not exactly sure who's going to sit on defense, but it's probably going to be a less than full strength defense. So I'm going back to Mike Will this week.
Tags, what do you think about Williams?
Williams, I had so much last week, and it's like that hangover effect with Mike Williams that I just had way too much exposure, and I could have won some good money if he had played well. But again, he did have multiple opportunities in the red zone. Like, he was targeted down there. He got everything I wanted. It's just he didn't convert. Yep. The Chiefs, I'm curious to know how many starters they're going to rest on defense. If they're going to rest anybody on defense, they're like, oh, Chris Jones is going to rest, he's not going to play. And I'm like, okay, I'll start upgrading players on that Chargers offense because the Chiefs have nothing to play for. Right. And if they don't have a pass rush, obviously that would be good for Herbert. So don't mind that one in tournaments. The other players, Corey Davis, 6,200. So the reason I like Davis is because no one's going to play him. I mean, people want to play A.J. Brown. I get it. People will play Tannehill as that leverage play off of Derrick Henry. But Corey Davis is priced at the point where it's almost too expensive to play him. He's 6,200. He didn't come down so much in price. I just think he's going to be heavily under-owned in a game where Houston, you really do whatever you want against them. And is it possible that A.J. Brown really is nicked up and that he's dealing with injuries and they consistently nag him, and that Corey Davis has a game like he had 2 weeks ago where he won people fantasy matchups? That's very possible. The other guys I'd mentioned, Calvin Ridley, obviously you don't want to shake him off in tournaments. 8,500, it's Tampa Bay. Tough matchup, but again, they could be resting starters with Carlton Davis. He didn't even play last week, so he might not play. Julio probably not going to play. Calvin Ridley, when he sees 8+ targets, is absolute money. Like, you just play him. And then the other two, Jerry Jeudy and Darius Slayton are tournament guys for me.
Yeah, Jeudy is a guy who, again, for kind of the reasons I mentioned, on FanDuel anyways, 5,100. I think that the 15 targets was a deliberate effort by sort of, whether it's a mandate, Drew Lock, target Jerry Jeudy, go after him, see what we've got here. I think we're going to see, maybe not the 15 targets again, but I think we're going to see plenty of action. So he was also on my list for wide receiver GPP plays. Let's get to quarterback here. Let's get to a GPP play for you, Jared. Start us off.
Yeah, I'm going to have, Kirk Cousins and Ryan Tannehill in, most of my GPP lineups. But I think, going again to the Colts and Phillip Rivers is interesting. I do think Jonathan Taylor is going to be chalky. So just getting some leverage off of that and saying, I don't know, what if Rivers throws, 3 touchdowns and Taylor only gets 1? I think, you're gaining a lot on the field there. And I do expect the Colts to put up 30+ points against the Jags.
Tags, what do you think about Rivers? And if not, who is your GPP play?
I like Rivers. It's like the same idea as Tannehill, right? Like, Rivers has not been as efficient, does not have the mobility, but it's the same idea, and you're getting him cheaper. So I definitely like that call. Mine we already talked about. I like Ryan Tannehill a ton in tournaments. Kirk Cousins is someone else that I was teetering between cash and tournaments. I like him there, but again, don't we have to worry about the lack of competition on the other side of the ball? Like, if Detroit can only muster up 10 points in this game, 13 points, how much are the Vikings really going to pass? That's my question.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fair point. Of course, we saw what the Bucs did last week in basically a half, but the Vikings' pass offense is not the Bucs. It's a fair point. I do agree that is something that at least people who are setting their DFS lineup should keep in the back of your mind. Personally, I'm not all that worried about it. I don't know. I think this is going to be a smash spot for Cousins in this one. For me, again, on FanDuel, because of his price, I'm probably going to Drew Lock because I do think that the price is not so cheap. He's much better priced on DraftKings, in my opinion, that I think people are not going to be like, ooh, I'm getting Lock in my lineup here at 6,800 necessarily. So he's a guy who I'm probably going to be looking at in GPPs. Let's go to tight end now. Jared, who's a GPP play for you?
Yeah, I think if you're playing Ryan Tannehill in tournaments, I think you stack him with one of those wide receivers. And I'm with Mike. I do think Corey Davis is a sweet tournament play coming off a dud. But I would stack Tannehill up with Jonnu Smith, too, at $3,800. He's sort of starting to come on again a bit. He has 12 targets over the last 2 games now. Yep. He's run a pass route on over 70% of the dropbacks in both of those games, which is a pretty nice number for a tight end. Jonnu was banged up in that first meeting against Houston, but Anthony Ferkser went for 113 yards and a score on 8 catches in that game. So I don't know if Jonnu can get that, that'd be nice.
By the way, guys, legitimately, I'm looking at Twitter right now. Dalvin Cook had an unexpected family emergency come up on Tuesday and returned to Miami. He will not play on Sunday's finale against Detroit. Right there, breaking news right there for you. So just so you know, out of curiosity, tags. I mean, they'll have a running, if it's Mike Boone, whatever, they'll have somebody. Does that change at all how you feel about them? Or do you just think it's just they're going to be able to win no matter what? So it doesn't really matter if it's Cook or not, and it still gives you the same concerns about Cousins, or does that make you feel at all better about Cousins?
This is going to make Kirk Cousins chalky. It's going to make Justin Jefferson chalky. It's going to make everybody on this Vikings team chalky because basically Dalvin Cook was the one concern you had about them. That was it. And Mike Boone is not going to change that. I mean, if anything, Mike Boone might become someone like, what's his price this week? I haven't even looked at it because
I'll check it out. I'll check it out.
You would think.
It is 4,000. Yeah, 4,000.
What's Madison's status? Was he out last week?
He's been out. Yeah, he's been out every week for like the last 3 weeks after his appendectomy.
No, he played. I think he played one. And I'm sorry, it's all jumbled at this point. He
didn't play
played
last week,
a game since his appendectomy, I think, and then left with a concussion. Right, Jared? Is that what it was?
Yeah, I think he played 2 weeks ago, and I think he missed last week with a concussion. So if he clears protocol, maybe we're
yeah, that's true. I've just kind of been assuming that he would be out because of the concussion. Yeah, he played, then had the concussion, then was out for Friday. But it is the concussion, not the. So he could play. You're right, and he's 6,100 on DraftKings. So anyway, we're just talking through. This is what you should be doing with your friends, by the way. Just be like, hey, what do you guys think of this? Who's this? Here. That's where we are basically with that. But anyway, sorry, just saw that come across the feed. So since we've talked about Kirk Cousins a lot, figured I might as well at least bring it up. Tags. Jared mentioned Jonnu Smith. How do you feel about Jonnu Smith as a GPP gamble? And if not, who's your guy?
He's always a tournament gamble. He's always that guy. Seriously, if you go back to the last time they played against Houston, which was again back in, what was it, I don't remember what week 6. Mm-hmm. Jonnu Smith got hurt in that game. Anthony Ferkser, the backup tight end, 8 catches for 113 yards and a touchdown in that game. So I definitely don't think you want to write off Jonnu Smith. I don't vary too much with tight ends between my cash and tournament plays, especially because when you go down to that cheap area, you're just looking for a guy that's guaranteed targets, and there's a reason that they're considered there. In tournaments, I don't know. I already mentioned George Kittle as someone I liked. If you want to go down, if you're looking for really cheap, Dalton Schultz for $3K.
Yeah,
I'd consider him.
All right, guys. Let's get to a DST. Jared, who's a DST you're looking at this week?
I mean, I think for cash games, it's pretty easy. You just play the Browns at $2,500 against Mason Rudolph. We actually saw that matchup last year. Of course, it was the Myles Garrett game, but Cleveland had 4 sacks and 4 interceptions in that game. So I think you probably should fade them in tournaments because I'm assuming they're going to be super chalky. But I think in cash, you just go with Cleveland.
Tags, what do you think?
I had 3 defenses down. Cleveland was like 2,500 if you have it. I think the Jets at 2,300, not a bad play. And then I also have the Titans at 2,200. Those are the 3 defenses I'd be considering.
Your entire lineup is going to be Jets and Titans this week, Tags. It's going to be.
It's going to be value, and it's just like the Jets. Come on.
I'm just kidding. I'm not. There's nothing wrong with the Tags, and you're going to get.
I am not playing Michael Perine, Jamison Crowder, and the Jets defense in my cash lineup.
Yeah, you are. Yeah, you are. You're just going to throw out a little Derrick Henry and Ryan Tannehill along with it. It'll be fine, and you'll get plenty of support in my household. You've seen the pictures of my son with all his Titans gear. You know I'm a Jets fan. We got your back. Don't worry about it. It's a great play. I love it. All right, stack of the week, lock of the week. Let's get to your stack of the week first. Jared, go ahead.
My stack of the week is still going to be Kirk Cousins, Justin Jefferson, and Irv Smith. We'll see how chalky it gets now. I'm more confident in them producing without Dalvin Cook.
Yeah. How about you, Tags?
I actually had that down as one. Instead of Irv Smith, I had DeAndre Swift. So you'd come back on the other side, play Cousins, Jefferson, and DeAndre Swift. I like that stack. But the one I'll go with, I'll go back to that Denver game, and I will say Drew Lock, Jerry Jeudy, and come back with either Nelson Aguilar. I think Aguilar is who I'd go with because it seems like Henry Ruggs is a forgotten man. And if that game is a bit more of a shootout, the Broncos don't have any cornerbacks in that roster anymore. So Aguilar, what did he see? 9 targets last week, performed well too. So Lock, Jerry Jeudy, and Nelson Aguilar. All
right, let's get to your lock of the week, Jared. Start us off. Yeah, I don't think that needs too much of an explanation. I think he'd probably fall in there. What about you, Tags?
Well, there's 2 of them now. It's Derrick Henry was going to be one, and the other one is Justin Jefferson. You play both of them.
Yeah, not LaMichael Perine, Tags.
Shut
not in
up.
There. Sorry. All right, I'm sorry. Okay, that is going to do it for Week 17 DFS. Jared, again, first, really, I want to make it clear. congratulations again on finishing in the top 10. I believe it's the second time in 3 years that you have finished in the top 10, if I'm not mistaken. It's an incredible achievement to do it once. It's a ridiculous achievement to do it twice. So really, congratulations to you. Remind everybody where they can find you and your great work.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks for having me back on here, guys. You can find my work on draftsharks.com, and you can follow me on Twitter at SmolaDS.
All right, so we are going to, as I mentioned, we've got another podcast in, I don't know, half hour before I take my trip to the transfer station. We're going to be doing a perfect draft podcast. It's a lot of fun. Hope you guys check it out. Until then, good luck with your Week 17 DFS lineups. It's, as you can see, there's going to be a lot of news. It's going to change as we go throughout the week. It's going to change the way you feel about it. So stay on top of everything, and I will catch you next time.
Thanks for tuning into the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel. Make sure to check out our featured videos as well. Also, make sure to click that red subscribe button to get notified when we post videos in the future.